and we are going to talk to Andrew, him in Florida. Andrew thinks Daoism offers the greatest outlook and interpretation of the universe. So we're going to talk about that. Andrew, you are on with Jimmy and Richard. What do you say, Andrew?
Greetings, gentlemen. Daoism is a fully naturalist, non-dogmatic religion that I think atheists should embrace wholeheartedly, because it supports scientific outlooks on the universe and the way of life. And so instead of calling it God, I would just say what we're calling God is incorrect. It's actually the Tao, the life force of the universe. It's the underlying principle or energy that permeates all existence. And so
Andrew,
if we see it this way, then...
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. If we just see it this way, we can see the natural flow of the universe being not controlled by an agency, but by simply a non-agent force.
Okay. So, Andrew, are you a theist?
No.
You're not a theist. Okay. All right, Andrew, I gotta call you out here. You have called in before and said that you were Catholic. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
so why would Catholicism?
So then why would you tell me that you're not a theist? Why would you tell me you're not a believer?
Oh, because I believe what I'm calling, because I've become much more progressive in my journey.
Okay, well,
and
hey,
what Christians call God. Sorry?
Okay, yeah, no, that's great. Look, getting some clarification, because I find it difficult to have a conversation with a Catholic who's trying to get me to accept Daoism. And, not having a clear-cut position could make it really difficult, to just have an honest conversation. But you seem to be saying that you are not as much of a Catholic as you used to be, and now you're accepting this Taoist life force perspective that the thing that the Tao represents, it must be God. But is this Tao all right, so where do you stand? Look, I have no proof, first of all, as an atheist, that there is a life force that connects all things. And I know that's what Taoism likes to purport. So I have no reason to believe that I am somehow connected, to a tree, to a forest, to a continent, or that Richard and I are connected at all. As much as I'd like to call him my friend, I don't think that, our lives are intertwined in any way. And I'm just not sure how to get there. I would need something a little bit substantial, some substantial evidence to try and get me there. But then how do you get there from Catholicism and still practice Catholicism? I mean, are you saying that Yahweh is not real anymore, but you're still going to do communion? Because you still said you practice your Catholicism, yet you're progressive and you're a Taoist. Man, we're all over the place. I think your position's a little all over the place. So I'd kind of need you to, can you negotiate, or can you navigate around being Catholic and Taoist, and give me some clarification there? And then why should I accept Taoism? I mean, why is somebody who doesn't believe, who relies on evidence to form my beliefs, accept Taoism? So you've got two tasks ahead of you. So consider that for a moment. I want to get Richard's take. Richard?
It's going to have a lot more than two fucking tasks.
Oh, man.
How many Taoist texts have you read, Andrew?
Oh, the Tao Te Ching. So
you've read the Tao Te Ching?
Just one.
So you've read when you say you're a Taoist, you're not taking into account the Li Zai, the Niai, the Wenzai, the Hu Chang Wang, the Tai Ping Jing, the Lexian Zhuan, or any of the other hundreds of Taoist texts. You're just taking in that one. I also want to kind of ask you.
I'm studying the Tao Te Ching right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You're just getting into it. I just wanted to kind of get a background of where you were coming from. And you've kind of got this very, I don't know if you've heard of this chap, but what I would call an Alan Watts in impression of Daoism, which is very westernized and lovely and all flowy and everything's lovely and everything's connected.
Alan Watts.
But say that again.
Correct, Alan Watts. Exactly. That's who I'm listening to right now.
Yeah, the problem with Alan Watts is very what shall we say, new agey, and doesn't it might reflect a general spirit of vague Taoism. But what he leaves out is all the wonderful Taoist practices of alchemy. He leaves Taoist practices out of trying to achieve eternal life. And they tried to achieve this through drinking mercury, which is tends to have the opposite effect of giving you eternal life. And all these wonderful actual Taoist principles and Taoist practices, which aren't covered by this kind of vague, flowery notion of Taoism that kind of Watts and other people like him put forward. And I'm not saying that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, because, everybody's allowed to interpret things in their own way. It just seems to me like you're taking this form of Taoism which you can attach to Catholicism and kind of including those principles and ignoring the parts of Taoism which are really, really problematic to Catholicism, because you wouldn't be going to heaven if you had eternal life with your physical body. And, that's problematic. And I'm just really interested in why you've kind of, and I appreciate that you're new to Taoism, don't get me wrong, so, I'll bear that in mind. But I'm wondering why you've started with this form of Taoism, which is, which you can tap on to Catholicism, and it's not so much of a problem, and ignored the forms of Taoism which are problematic to Catholicism.
So, in summation, right? Getting back to my question. In the end, you've just spoken to Richard, who has got a great deal of familiarity. He gave you some points to consider, and now, having said all that, how do you reconcile your Catholicism with Taoism? That's the question I think Richard and I both want you to answer. Richard, fair enough?
Yeah.
All right. Andrew, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I've been studying comparative religion, and so you can practice religion in a way that's non-fundamentalist, non-dogmatic. And I've heard that most religions actually mix very different beliefs. Like even within the Bible, there are mixtures of different beliefs. Like Paul rejects circumcision, so he's retconning the Old Testament. And so when I'm studying the Bible through a historical critical lens, I just see a complexity of different varied beliefs. And people accept adopting the ones that fits their own interpretation of the world. And there's even different views of the afterlife within the Bible. So, like some books say nothing happens, like Ecclesiastes. Some books say you go to heaven, not heaven, you get resurrected. Some books says you go to Sheol. So, if the Bible is that diverse, then a religion isn't something to be super dogmatic about. And that's why I'm approaching this. I don't want to lose everything I've gained from Christianity, but I want to throw away the toxic elements of it. And I'm still trying to interpret what God is to this day, but I'm okay.
No, that's great, because you and I have talked about whether or not the Catholic Church is progressive, and you have made cases that you've called in and made cases about the church being progressive, but then you, in that call, also admitted, actually they won't marry homosexual people. And I believe we've talked about abortion with you, and you were a pretty diehard Catholic, from what I can tell. Now, it seems that you have gone out of your way to study comparative religions, and that you are now getting rid of the toxic traits of the religion you were brought up with, and you are looking to adopt more positive traits. I applaud you for that. I couldn't be happier for what I'm hearing. And I just hope you keep going down that road. My issue is, yeah, you're right. The Bible, religion in general, does have many nuances to it. How do you figure out which ones work and which ones don't? Right? That is the key question that we seem to always ask and never get a clear-cut answer on. How do you decipher, between the things that are clearly atrocious and then the other ones that really aren't so bad? And then so Richard asks you, hey, look, how come you're accepting Taoism, but you're only accepting it for the positive parts, and you're not really taking into consideration all of the kind of crazy things that go along with it? Crazy, I say, with lack of a better term at the moment. But, in hindsight, I have to say, I'm really not all that surprised. I mean, this is a common approach to religion, right? People like to put off the really bad things and accept the really good things, but you have to deal with the whole thing, right? You have to deal with the entire book. You have to be able to reconcile that entire book. And it's impossible to do. And I think that you're going to run into the same problems with Taoism as you run into with Catholicism. So I wish you the best on your journey, and I hope you keep questioning the things that you have a problem with. But in the end, I think you're still going to continue to run into the same issues the deeper you get with whatever religion it is that you choose. And I hope that skepticism, I hope you maintain that skepticism. I hope that you still are not okay with the atrocities, even if you move to a new religion. So I don't know. Do you have a point on that? Do you want to respond? What do you want to give Richard a go?
Sure.
It's your call,
sure.
Andrew.
I guess I'll give a quick response to that, and then I would like to hear what Richard says about mixing, different religious beliefs or practices. I just want to say that we're American, or we're from the UK, and so we can embrace our citizenship without accepting all the toxic elements of our government. Our government has positive elements and toxic elements. And so we rewrite our constitution and we don't accept all of it. Or like, for example, we have relationships with people. Our partners have positive elements, and there's toxic elements of my partner that I don't embrace. So I don't know why religion has to be perfect for you to embrace the good elements. It's just an aspect of your life.
Are you really a Catholic, though? My point would be, are you really a Catholic, though? Or are you really a Taoist if you're not doing all the things that goes with that religion? I mean, you could be anything you want to be. Why even put a label on it? You can be just a person that, wants to do this thing because it's good. Why call yourself a Catholic, or why you call yourself a Taoist if you're not going to embrace the entire Taoist perspective? Now, the problem I have with, this is a little bit of a different conversation, I think, but the problem I have with comparing constitution with or any constitution with a holy document or a religious text is that one was clearly, obviously made by people, written on histories that we can verify, and is open to change. One, on the other hand, is none of those things. And I'm not going to tell you which one is which, but I think you already know what I'm referring to, which one is which. And without me even saying it, if you can acknowledge that one is probably more made up than the other one that's definitely not, well, I think the analogy is poor. I think it's not a good analogy at all. But I want to hold our thoughts and put a pin in that for a second and let Richard respond.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Jimmy a little bit on this, and I might disagree with him. We'll see where it goes. I'm with him on the aspect of I see nothing wrong with taking positive elements out of different traditions and different religions if it's going to be genuinely helpful to you, if it's beneficial to you, and it's not harmful to anyone else. If you want to do a little bit of this from Catholicism, a little bit of a ritual from Catholicism, and a little bit, a little bit of meditation from Daoism, I don't recommend drinking mercury to live forever. But if you want to do any of the positive things, which are going to benefit you, and maybe even benefit those people around you, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong at all with that. There is a caveat to that. And that caveat is that we had a caller last week well, not name, who won't speak to me, but he spoke to some of the other hosts, and he likes to mix lots of these religious ideas, these kind of vague religious ideas, these vague niceties from religion, with taking immense amounts of drugs, which is not recommended, because what it leads you is to believe that there is a God in the sky. And that's what I'm not suggesting you're going to take loads of drugs, but the caveat is, make sure that if you're going to take the positive elements of these, that you're not going to kind of go down the route of believing that there is that you're not believing in a God, that you're not taking on the supernatural elements to it, that you are being skeptical and critical thinking while you're taking these positive elements out of it. Equating the Tao with a God is not doing that. And I think that's something you need to check within yourself, because it's all right taking practices which are helpful. But when you start saying, well, I believed in this Catholic God, but now I believe in this Tao thing and I'm equating them as the same thing, you're not really stepping outside of that supernatural thinking. You're still in that box. And I think while you're still in that box, doing this thing of taking elements from different religions is not going to give you the benefits that Jim is talking about and which I think are possible, because you're still stuck in that. You basically seem to be cherry picking to kind of cover up the difficulties you're having with one tradition and taking elements from another tradition to kind of cover those elements up. So you might have problems with the traditional omnipresent God of the Bible, the classical God of theism, and you're trying to take something else and still hang on to that, but call it by a different name. And I don't think that's tremendously helpful. It comes down to whether you care about what you believe in to be true, or whether you're doing it to be comforted by it. And that is a distinction, I think, that only you can make within yourself. And the difficulty with these problems is I might throw something at you and say, I think you're doing this, and you might automatically push back just to defend yourself. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to kind of go away and have a think about what are the reasons I am adopting this different tradition. What are the reasons I'm still holding on to these elements of Catholicism? Is it because I still believe a God to be true and I'm trying to kind of reconcile the bits that I don't agree with within that? Or is it because there are certain traditions, rituals or traditions within Catholicism which aren't going to harm anyone, but I find helpful in my daily life? And these practices from Daoism enhance those. That's fair enough. But I think you've got to think within yourself, and you've got to have these conversations with yourself as to what are the reasons you're going outside of your kind of the tradition you grew up with, and why are you taking these elements from these other traditions, and what is it that's appealing about these elements from other traditions? Because the red flag was raised with me when I mentioned Alan Watts, and you were like, yeah, that's the guy, because Alan Watts is very much one of these people who will throw woo out there. It was very much the forerunner to Deepak Chopra and people like that, and he'll throw lots of things out there which are all very wonderful. They sound lovely, they sound very idealistic, but it's absolute bullshit. And I think you've got to kind of reconcile within yourself whether you're doing this because you're genuinely kind of questioning things and seeking an answer to things, or whether you're doing this to make yourself feel comfortable while grasping onto these traditions which help you do that. And I'd like you to respond, Andrew, because I've talked for quite a while.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback. It makes a lot of sense what you guys said. It makes a lot of sense. I would just say that religion doesn't have to be all about belief. It's also a lot about practices and cultural traditions. if you take away the supernatural elements and you take away the literalism of those beliefs, and you can just say, oh, these are just beliefs. They don't have to be facts. I see a lot of cultural benefit in religion as a psychological and cultural phenomenon from a humanistic perspective. So you're right, Richard and Jimmy Jr., because I do see things in Christianity that kind of don't make sense with science and history and even toxic elements that are bad for me psychologically. I have been practicing Qigong for 2 years as a Catholic, and I don't see, I guess most Catholics would be uncomfortable with it, but I see that it has only enhanced my life. So even though it might not be literally true, these religions do create a lot of meaning, and I can't get to, okay, therefore there's no God of any kind at all. I'm an agnostic when it comes to the supernatural, but I do see a lot of things in Taoism that make sense. So that's kind of where I am, and it's a journey. So I appreciate the feedback, and that's, yeah.
That was very insightful, and I really appreciate you, being honest and willing to have these conversations. I want to be open to you a little bit. When I was in college, that was when my religion really started to fall apart for me, because I was a history major and a religious studies minor. I actually considered myself a Taoist first. I didn't skip straight from being a Lutheran to being an atheist. And, Kelly Laughlin, one of our hosts who was just on the last call before me, I believe he's mentioned this before, that he switched to Buddhism. I mean, he made a transition from this deity-centric religion to something that is just like a set of values, but they're values that are, maybe God-given, essentially, or like natural, right? And they make up this religion without actually having to have a God. So, it's a common thing for a lot of people to do. It's take these baby steps away while they're, I dare say, transitioning. I mean, I don't know what it is exactly that you're looking for. I don't know where you'll end up, but I definitely think that you have transitioned away from being Catholic. And I just think that, you should keep doing what you're doing. So I appreciate the call. Thank you for being a repeat caller and just being honest and continuing to have these discussions. Richard?
Yeah, and continue to call in and let us know where you're going with it and how your journey progresses. And I agree. We've had some, Andrew and the call earlier on in the night, we've had some about the Giants. We've had some really good faith conversations tonight, and I really appreciate those. That's, for me, is what this show's all about. So I just want to extend my thanks, Andrew, as well, before we let you go, for that and your contribution to this and your honesty within this call as well. Both myself and Jimmy, I'm sure, appreciate that you are on a journey, and that you are doing a lot of thinking through things, and you will come across, I'm not going to say you will come across a lot of atheists who will be shouting at you, and I'll definitely see comments from atheists who have been shouting at the screen saying, well, you need to get rid of it straight away, you need to get rid of that supernatural thinking straight away. It's a process, doesn't always happen. I'm not saying it can't, but it doesn't always happen. It sounds like you're going in the right direction, and it sounds like you're considering things. And when you're considering things, you are going in the right direction. Because a lot of the times when we come across people who are like transitioning between one faith or another, or from one faith to atheism, what we get is that they don't consider things, and that's when they become dogmatic and refuse to listen. So as whenever anyone's considering something, as you are, I think it's worthwhile